This is an espresso machine made by a jet engineer that you can take anywhere. Let's look at the 9Barista. Now, I love it when somebody takes something and absolutely turns it on its head. And that's what the 9Barista team has done with this espresso maker. Espresso is very well known, how it works, how you're supposed to do it, and they've taken that process and made it happen in such a unique form factor that it's really neat what they have done with this coffee maker. It was designed by a fellow named William Playford, who studied jet engineering at Cambridge. And the way they've designed it is kind of like a mocha pot, if you've seen one of these things. These are Italian coffee makers, very popular in Europe, and they make kind of like this quasi-espresso type drink, but it's not quite espresso. And the 9Barista is definitely not your grandma's mocha pot. This is a real espresso maker that operates at 9 bars, the perfect temperature. It's really impressive how they've designed it. Now, before we get too far into this, a quick disclaimer. As soon as I saw the 9Barista for the first time, I was immediately intrigued by this coffee maker. Like, it looks cool. As soon as you look at it, you can tell it's something that's been highly thought out and well engineered. And I was just really intrigued with this coffee maker. And I reached out to the 9Barista team and said, I would actually really love to do a YouTube review on this. Is there any way that you would send me a loaner? And they said, absolutely. So they sent me over the loaner. There's no payment being exchanged between me and 9Barista. I made this review because I wanted to, and they were gracious enough to indulge me. Okay, so let's dive into how the 9Barista works. And it's pretty ingenious how this thing actually works. It has a boiler here on the bottom that does boil water very similar to a mocha pot. But unlike a mocha pot, there is a gasket and a pressure release valve that will actually keep that water in there at a high pressure until it reaches 9 bars. That's 9 atmospheres of pressure, which is exactly what we would want for espresso. Now, that's pretty cool in and of itself, but is this just a 9-bar mocha pot? And the answer is not really, because to keep water at that pressure, for it to actually boil, it's going to be much hotter than what an espresso would normally call for. And that would end up not tasting the greatest. So there's some really fascinating things that the 9Barista team has done to not only regulate the pressure, but to also regulate the temperature. So what happens here is when you fill this up and then you put the 2 boilers together, is water will actually come up through here and coat these tubes that you can see right here. And that water is held at atmospheric pressure. So it will boil at 100 degrees Celsius or whatever water boils at your location. That changes by altitude. And what will happen is, as the water is traveling up through these pipes, when the gasket releases at 9 bars of pressure and the water starts to go up around here, that boiling water will actually cool down the water that is traveling down through the pipes down to boiling temperature, 100 degrees Celsius or thereabouts. Then what happens after that is the water continues to go up through here, and when it passes these heat sinks right here, it drops another 7 degrees or so Celsius. So at that point, the water is not only at 9 bars of pressure, but at a perfectly controlled 93 to 94 degrees Celsius, the exact perfect temperature for espresso. And at that point, the water comes up through here and passes into the coffee, which is held into a portafilter that is basically flipped upside down and held in place with this little shower screen attachment right here. It is really smart how this thing is designed. And what I really like about it is not only does it make espresso in a completely controlled way, you can also do it wherever you have heat, coffee, and water. It also comes with this heat transfer plate if you need to get the 9Barista heating up a little bit more quickly. This will kind of gather the heat of whatever you're heating it on and get the unit to heat up a little bit quicker. And this induction plate. It doesn't work on an induction stove, so this will help along with that if you have an induction stove. So I think we should actually make an espresso with this right now. So I got my coffee in a coffee grinder. I weighed it out ahead of time, 18 grams, and I've actually got a bottle of water here as well. You'll have to forgive my rusty bucket that I am putting stuff on here. But the first thing I'm gonna do is grind up my coffee. This can actually take a minute if you are grinding at an espresso setting. You have to grind pretty fine. I am going to take my portafilter off. So I'm just going to dump the coffee and I'm gonna make sure it's as evenly distributed as I'm able. I'm gonna give this a tamp. And I'm gonna put my shower screen on. All right, so my coffee is good to go. Now I'm gonna prepare my boiler. So I'm gonna open this up and I'm going to put in water right up until the fill line. And then I'm going to put the upper boiler into the lower boiler. And you can see that water kind of starts to come up around those coils. All right, now all that's left to do is we need to put the portafilter on top. We'll get our stove. Now we just need to add the heat. Now the process of heating the 9Barista, it does take a few minutes. It takes about 6 minutes, they say it should take to get to the point where there's actually espresso coming out. So you might need to play with your heat and your espresso grind to get it to pull in the right way. So dialing in can be a little bit more time consuming with this coffee maker. And what will start to happen is as this lower boiler is heating up, it will start to build up more and more pressure. And then what will happen as that is happening is the upper boiler will also heat up, but it will boil more quickly because it's at atmospheric pressure. So eventually what we're going to see is we're going to start to see steam coming out of this chimney, and that's an indicator the water in the upper boiler is boiling and the pressure release valve will release fairly soon, and then we'll start to see espresso coming out the top. It's really a fascinating design, and it's almost like as the team was coming up with problem after problem of how to actually get espresso pulling in a portable way at both 9 bars of pressure and the right temperature, they just kept coming up with these really innovative solutions of how to do that, and I really like that. So I don't know if you can hear it, but we've got some boiling coming out of this chimney now, which means that we're going to start seeing some espresso come out of here in just a second. Eventually that boiling will get to a higher intensity as that hot water starts going through, and that means the espresso is just about to be pulled. All right, here it comes. Looks delicious. Once it starts running, it's only going to pull the perfect amount for a good shot of espresso, and then it's going to stop. So we can turn that off, and now we just get to pour ourselves a wonderful shot of espresso. Lots of crema on that. Let's see how this tastes. That is delicious, just like I would have at home. That gets me every time with using this machine because I'm literally in the middle of the forest and I'm having an espresso just like I would have off my home machine. Now what's really neat is this thing is made of brass. Because of that, it cools off very quickly. So you can just pour some water over it and it's going to be ready to handle almost right away. All you need to do is open this pressure release valve to let out any extraneous pressure that may be left over inside the machine, and then you can literally open this and get to cleaning it very quickly after you are finished using it. So what are some things that you may want to consider if you're trying to figure out if you should buy the 9Barista or not? This is not a cheap coffee maker. This comes in at 379 pounds plus whatever shipping is going to take to get it to wherever you live. So this is not really a budget coffee maker. It's also kind of slow. So if you need to dial in a coffee very quickly or serve a lot of people or make a milk drink, this is probably not going to be the best solution for you either. And you can make coffee with it anywhere, but it is kind of heavy. Like, it's not a lightweight coffee maker like the AeroPress. Now, I love to camp and I like to backpack, I like to car camp, I do it all. I love the outdoors. And if I'm going somewhere where I just want to take my backpack and nothing else, very often I'm loading up the AeroPress because it's lightweight, it's very flexible, it's very forgiving. The 9Barista is a lot heavier to take with you than an AeroPress, and it requires a couple extra tools to use. So that's something that you're going to have to consider for sure. But that being said, I have traveled with the 9Barista. My sister recently got married in the Cayman Islands and we all went down for a great party. And I took this because, I'll be honest, I wanted to make coffee on the beach. And it was amazing to be able to do that, to take this down to a secluded beach, make myself an espresso that was better than anywhere I could get on the island. Well, maybe I don't want to say that, but it was really good. And I was just sitting there drinking this espresso and it was amazing. But what I didn't expect was I ended up using it every morning at our Airbnb as well because it just was so good. And what we would do, we always enjoy single Americanos in the morning. So I would just split the shot, and we would have our morning coffee routine just like we were having at home. It was amazing. You do also see people at home with these things, and this is their primary way of making espresso. So there is a bit of a multi-tiered use, but I will say a niche use. So rather than try and explain if this is the coffee maker for you, I'm just gonna say, if this is for you, you probably know it. You're not gonna be afraid to spend a little bit more. You like traveling, but maybe you know it's not gonna work for backpacking. This machine does one thing, and that thing that it does really well. It pulls an espresso shot that is perfect to within a very specific set of predefined parameters. You can't adjust it, but that's kind of okay because that's kind of the way that this machine is designed to pull espresso anyways. I love this coffee maker because it's somebody who has taken a risk to design this thing. It's very well thought out and engineered, but it is a very narrowly focused product, and I kind of like that. It's somebody who had a vision for something and they decided to see if they could bring it to market, and they succeeded. Is it for everybody? Probably not. But is it something that is really cool that I am excited to share about? Absolutely. That being said, I would love to hear what you think of the 9Barista. Is this just a little over the top for you? Because I would understand if it is. Or do you think this is a really innovative product? I would love to hear what you think in the comments. And until next time, cheers.